Springs police are investigating a video showing a cross burning near a mayoral campaign sign in Colorado Springs.
A racial slur painted on Yemi Mobolade's campaign is now at the center of a bias-motivated crime investigation tonight. Some of the video in this story might be difficult to watch.
In April of 2023, residents of Colorado Springs, Colorado were greeted with something that you would probably figure would happen in 1923. An image of a cross burning as well as vandalism with racial slurs on a black mayoral candidate known as Yemeni Mobolade, who would ultimately end up becoming the first black and first Democratic mayor of Colorado Springs, was splashed all over the local news agencies. In fact, somebody immediately after this cross was set ablaze, after, of course, these racial slurs were discovered, decided to forward all of these different videos to all the different local news agencies and papers, almost as if they were trying to ensure that this story got out to as many people as possible. Now, of course, Yemeni Mobolade had recently finished as the top person in the first round of the Colorado Springs mayoral election. Now, they do a runoff system, so the top two candidates end up going against each other unless one of them gets over 50% in the initial stage. And Mobolade got 29%, and the next closest candidate, a man called Wayne Williams, he ended up getting 19%. So he was obviously the favorite to win, but the whole point of a runoff election system is that after you clear out all the candidates that are pulling votes away from the top two people, you end up with the election of just those two, and maybe you end up with a different result. And this is what a lot of people were hoping for in this particular election that didn't want Mobolade to become the mayor of Colorado Springs, Colorado. However, there were some people on the other side of that issue. There were some people who believed that we needed to give him a bit of an edge, and when you don't have anything of substance to throw at the opponent, what do you ultimately end up reaching for? The evil white racism card. Oh my god, we're in 1923. There's so much evil white racism around. We have to vote for Mobolade in order to fight back against the evil white racism. Now, of course, this was ultimately revealed to be a hoax, but we're going to talk about this, talk about what the hoaxers were actually convicted of, because it's actually a ridiculous conviction when you think about it. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Bart, Heather, you can see there are marks on the ground here of burn marks, and this sign has now been removed. It was taken down immediately by a volunteer for Yemi Mobolade's campaign. Now the Rocky Mountain NAACP is calling for the person responsible to be held accountable for this hate. This video shows a cross in flames and a Yemi for Mayor sign spray painted with the N-word. The video was sent to our newsroom last night, and though we've repeatedly reached out to the person who sent it to figure out the origination of the video, they haven't responded to our multiple emails.
So already this is incredibly suspicious. As you guys well know, the cross burning is very indicative of Ku Klux Klan activity, but the fact of the matter is the KKK doesn't really exist in any substantial way in the United States of America, and in fact, the only way they actually still do exist is in the hearts and minds of people who want to be victimized by evil white racists. But as we know time and time again with all these different various examples, the supply of evil white racists nowhere near meets the demand. So of course we're ultimately going to end up finding out that the three people behind this were three black people, and specifically black nationalists that wanted to back their black brother over a white person because they just wanted to see a black man get to power by any means necessary. But there's also things in this initial report that are incredibly suspicious from the jump, like the fact that all these local news agencies, as I told you in the open, were sent the video immediately. However, when they decided that they wanted to reach out to the people who sent them the video to get more information, they completely ghosted them. They were hiding their identities, even though presumably these were the people who uncovered the crime, not the ones who committed the crime. And of course, they went double hard. They did the cross burning, and of course, they sprayed the N-word on his particular sign, which was taken down at the moment in time that the local news media ended up doing the report. And already, I would say that there is a high level of suspicion of who was behind this, because this is just too insane and too ridiculous. Now, in addition to that, we also have a pretty busy thoroughfare near them. It seems rather weird that nobody would have saw anything, but the fact is they could have done this in the middle of the night. Obviously, the video is from the nighttime, and maybe just maybe that's how they were able to avoid scrutiny. But again, they couldn't avoid scrutiny for long because the FBI ended up figuring out who was actually behind this.
I immediately got calls starting very, very early this morning.
The video has also made its way to the Rocky Mountain NAACP.
This type of hate, this type of bigotry has to be rooted out, stamped out, and addressed, and the person should be held accountable because the next time it could be someone's life.
Now, of course, we get a statement from the Rocky Mountain NAACP, and the woman starts yelling that this type of hate, this type of violence, it needs to be rooted out because the next time this happens, it could be someone's life. And in reality, I agree. This type of anti-white hate, this type of anti-white smearing in the form of hoaxes should be rooted out. But the fact is, again, these people want to breathe life into the KKK, but I believe they haven't actually killed somebody, a black person, since like 1980. This is not a thing that happens in the United States of America. And spoiler alert for those of you who might be questioning whether or not Colorado was a hotbed of the Klan, it never really was in the first place. So the idea that this would happen there, the idea that this would be done against this black candidate who ultimately ended up getting, by the way, in the runoff election, nearly 60% of the vote, is absurd and ridiculous in every way. And yet this was pushed forward in the lead up to the conclusion of that runoff election, and it quite possibly boosted up the current mayor of Colorado Springs to the point where he won convincingly. Now, I'm under the impression that he likely would have won anyway. He was the leading candidate for a reason, but the fact is, this is absurd. The anger and frustration is ridiculous, especially when all indications of this very suspicious crime are that it was a hoax.
The Colorado Springs Police Department is now investigating this as a bias crime case, working to figure out who spray painted the sign and set the cross on fire. Prescott says her main priority is accountability.
It's 2023. It is not 1943. This type of hate doesn't exist and it shouldn't be tolerated at all.
That the person who did this is found and arrested and that Yemi is kept safe.
This needs to be the first, only, and last warning that we ever see in the history of the state on this type of behavior.
Again, I do agree with this representative from the Rocky Mountain NAACP. It is, in fact, 2023 at the time that this crime took place, not 1943. So obviously that should be a big alarm bell to you, because why would somebody do this in current year or that year at the time in order to go after this black candidate that is obviously winning the election or on the path to winning the election? It seems like the only reason somebody would do this is because they want to boost him up.
Statement, Mobolade wrote, "I'm aware of the video sent to media and recognize the hurt this heinous content causes our city. We do not know if the photo is of real events or if it was staged, created. Either way, it's reprehensible. This is not the Colorado Springs we know, and it is likely the actions of an unhealthy individual. Simply put, this is a distraction from what this election is about, our families and building a Colorado Springs that puts our families first. We encourage the media to refrain from posting these photos as not to give this sort of behavior any oxygen."
Now, I want to give some credit to Yemi Mobolade for that particular statement, because he says, look, we don't know if this was staged. We don't know what the reason was behind this. The media shouldn't be showing these videos. It's a distraction from the campaign. This is not who Colorado Springs is, and it's likely being done or perpetuated by a disturbed individual. All those things are very good. All those things are very interesting. Although I will point out, it's kind of a layup statement for him to put out there, because you have all these different various people like the NAACP woman that are willing to jump on this story and put it out regardless, even if he calls for calm. So he gets to look good, say that he's not really about this evil white racism under every rock, while at the same time a bunch of hatchet men end up doing his dirty work. Now, like I said, eventually we would end up discovering that 3 black suspects were in fact behind this crime, and that's what I want to jump to right now because it was incredibly obvious.
A woman tied to a hate crime hoax involving the Colorado Springs mayor has pleaded guilty to federal charges. We've told you about this story before. An apparent burning cross with a racial slur were seen in Colorado Springs back in April of 2023. This happened when now Mayor Yemi Mobolade was campaigning. Since then, federal investigators have accused 3 suspects of staging the scene, alleging it was done to boost attention around Mobolade's campaign. Today, one of those suspects, 38-year-old Deanna West, and just to be clear, that's not who's pictured here on your screen, that's another suspect, but 38-year-old Deanna West pleaded guilty to 1 count of maliciously conveying false information about a threat by means of fire.
Now, the suspects in this case are Derek Bernard Jr., who is pictured right here and improperly pictured in this local news segment, a woman called Ashley Danielle Blackwood, and a woman called Deanna Crystal West, aka Vital Idol Suites and Sage West. And they were ultimately convicted in their role in this particular hoax. Although, again, I gotta give an asterisk right there because they weren't actually convicted of the hoax. They were convicted of something else, which we will touch on in just a little bit. Now, according to the indictment, all three of them were affiliated with a non-profit media outlet called Family Flavors, the Side World Broadcast Network, which is dedicated to activism, community, and family in all caps, according to their online profile. Now, the indictment indicates that Bernard hatched the plan to stage the hoax the day after the April 4th mayoral election, sent the top two candidates to the runoff. He texted Black Cloud saying he wanted to talk in person and that, quote, "I'ma talk to you about a few plans." He would later tell Black Cloud in a Facebook message that Mo Bellotti really won already and the runoff was only being held because they ain't trying to let an African American win. "I can't let the Klan retake the city," he wrote, according to the indictment. In mid-April, Bernard also sent Mo Bellotti a Facebook message that said, quote, "I know it's crunch time, sir, but look, I spoke with some of my friends in other places and there's a plot amidst. I'm mobilizing my squadron in defense for the final push. Black Ops style Big Brother. The Klan cannot be allowed to run the city again." Now, between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning, Bernard ultimately ended up initiating this plot. This is likely how there were not enough people on the busy thoroughfare in order to see what was going on, but you could see by his messages, he's obviously obsessed with the Klan. Again, they exist most strongly in his own mind, but what I also find very fascinating about these revelations is that they ultimately ended up forcing the now current mayor of Colorado Springs to issue a denial that he was involved in any way, shape, or form in these particular crimes.
Colorado Springs Mayor Yemi Mobolade says he did not lie to the FBI when they interviewed him about an alleged hate crime hoax. In November, 3 suspects were indicted on charges related to faking that hate crime last year by vandalizing a Mobolade campaign sign with a racial slur and burning a cross in front of it.
False claims have circulated about my involvement and have been amplified by a small group of politically motivated individuals. The rumors have become so ridiculous that they've led to bogus reports in a Nigerian tabloid saying I was arrested by the FBI.
Last month, 3 suspects were indicted on charges related to the alleged hoax. Arrest papers say Mobolade had been in contact with Derek Bernard, one of the 3 accused of staging the hate crime. Right-wing media site The Daily Wire reported soon after, the FBI referred Mobolade for prosecution for making false statements, but the Department of Justice refused to pursue it for racial and political reasons. They cited an unnamed FBI source. Fox 21 has not been able to verify this report, but the mayor says he had no knowledge, warning, or involvement in this crime, and he didn't lie about it either.
I voluntarily provided all requested communication without a subpoena. I was, quote, identified by law enforcement as a victim or potential victim during the investigation of the criminal case.
Now, again, this is one of the most fascinating elements of this story because it's not just a Facebook message, according to this National Review article, which, by the way, pulls from the FBI indictment, that indicates that maybe there's a possibility that the current mayor of Colorado Springs was involved. Let's go back to the article so I can give you that information. So authorities later found a spray paint can in the passenger compartment of Black Cloud's car, the indictment says, and around 7:30 p.m. that night, Bernard texted Mobolade, "I guarantee the finish," close quote. A little over an hour later, Black Cloud and West drove to the parking lot of a large retail store, used the Wi-Fi, and created a new Gmail account, and that account was used to email a photo and the video of the defaced sign and burning cross to local media outlets, nonprofits, and government officials, Mobolade's campaign, and their own media group. At about 10:55 that night, Bernard spoke with Mobolade on the phone for about 5 minutes, according to the indictment. In the statement at the time to the local media, Mobolade said he didn't know if the images were real, staged, or created. Either way, it was reprehensible. On May 16th, 2023, Mobolade, a businessman, pastor, and political independent, won the election with 57% of the vote, routing Williams, a city councilman and a former Secretary of State. Bernard texted texted him that day congratulating him, adding that, quote, "We got you through it all, my brother," close quote. Another time, though, we'll handle business. Now, let's just say the Facebook messages, the text messages, the 5-minute phone call, and all the different communications, including in-person communications, between the leader of this gang of suspects and Mobilotti, the current mayor of Colorado Springs, raise more than a few eyebrows. And I understand that he's forcefully denying it, but one of the reasons why is because these people not only asserted this in these messages that they were working with him and actually were communicating with him, but in their defense to the charges that they were facing, they also said in open court that they were coordinating with Mobilotti, and yet the Colorado Springs mayor has yet to be held accountable. In fact, one of the craziest aspects of this story is what these individuals were actually convicted of, because you would think, logically, they would be convicted of initiating the hoax, of triggering this investigation, of maybe setting a fire in a public place that was wildly inappropriate, but in reality, they were actually convicted of the charge of actually inciting hate and intimidation against Mobilotti.
A couple accused of staging a cross burning in the Springs has been found guilty of conspiring to threaten that city's first black mayor, even though they claim that what they did was to drum up support for his mayoral campaign. Prosecutors say Derek Bernard and Ashley Blackcloud, who are black, orchestrated this cross burning and defaced a campaign sign for now Mayor Yemi Mobilotti, then sent the video to local news outlets so there would be sympathetic coverage of his campaign. Attorneys for the defendants claim it was political theater meant to call attention to racism in Colorado Springs. The defense team also claims that Mobilotti knew about this hoax, while prosecutors argued that Mobilotti and his family perceived the cross burning as a real threat. Mobilotti was questioned by the FBI, never charged with any involvement in the hoax. This afternoon, a federal jury found Blackcloud and Bernard guilty of conveying false information about a threat. They face up to 10 years in prison.
Yeah, you heard that right. 3 black people, 1 pled guilty, so we actually don't know the specifics of what she pled to, but these 2 black people that went to trial, including the ringleader, were convicted of the actual crime, not the hoax, as if they did it with genuine intent in order to intimidate somebody based on racial reasons. So this is one of the strangest hate crime hoaxes of all time, because everybody basically acknowledges that this was a hoax. Everybody acknowledges, based on all the information, that they did it on behalf of Monbade, but guess what? They were convicted as if they were quite literally Klansmen, which is just absurd. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. Was the mayor involved? Do you think this conviction is legit? Are you happy that they're getting a serious prison time based on this conviction? Or does it annoy you that when you get convicted of the hoax, you get almost no time, so this was the only adequate way in order to make sure that they serve some punishment? All your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the hoax that maybe put Monbade into office in Colorado Springs. Till next time.